If there was ever a seemingly uncrackable nut in our classrooms, it's how to teach our students to study. And if you've ever struggled with that, as I have, then this video is for you. So first, let's deal with the problems that keep students from studying well, and then second, I'll tell you what I think are the best principles for studying. And I promise I'm gonna get practical at the end, so stick with me. Now, we like to believe that our high school students who have already passed through 10 or more years of school show up in our classrooms already knowing how to study, and therefore we can move on assuming they know what to do in order to get good grades in our class. Yeah, no. In my experience, there's usually a handful of students for whom school and good grades are just their thing, and they have figured out how to study on their own. Now, let's be honest, those students don't really need our help, but the majority of students that sit in front of me in any given classroom have no idea how to study. I know that because their idea of effective studying involves something like reading and rereading their textbook the night before the exam or watching my videos on repeat the morning of the exam. And as teachers, we know that such activities, whatever else they are not study. Remember, there is a great difference between recognition of a concept and actually learning. Repeated exposure to a concept can lead to recognition, but not necessarily learning. So for the kid who repeatedly reads the textbook or watches my videos, they recognize the Indian Removal Act or Mansa Musa, and the more they read about those things, the more confident they are that they have learned about those things, but in reality, they only recognize it. And that uncomfortable reality comes crashing down on them as soon as they sit for a test. Like, I know I saw Napoleon III in my textbook, but what in the fresh heck did he do? And that can be so frustrating for them because they were doing what they thought was studying, but when it came time to retrieve that knowledge, they discovered that they never really knew it. And that experience can lead to all kinds of discouragement and maybe even a resolve to quit trying so hard since all their work is for naught. But we, as their teachers, have a unique opportunity to help them change their studying habits so that when they arrive at that assessment, they can have everything they need. So let's talk about it. Now, I assume I don't need to go into all the research about how good studying is accomplished in spaced intervals instead of crammed into one night. You know this, I know this, even our students probably know without having to be told. So yes, that's the first thing with which they need to come to terms. And look, I already know your objection because I have it too. They're not going to study each night unless I force them to, and then they're still probably not going to do it. First of all, I believe that nothing good ever comes out of forcing anyone to do anything they don't want to do. Second of all, I'm not suggesting anything by way of coercion here. Yes, it is not our responsibility to study for them, but all that lies in our realm of responsibilities to lay out a clear path to success in our classroom, which includes teaching them the principles of study. If they don't walk that path, that's on them, but it's up to us to clear the path and stock them with the necessary provisions to reach their destination. Okay, now the main skill I want to teach my students about studying is how to read and summarize, or watch videos and summarize, or take a lesson and summarize. The point is summarize. Now, before I tell you what I mean by that, allow me a brief caveat. I believe homework is a crime. I am a grown man with a job and a family, and you are all grown men and women with jobs, and some of you have families as well. In what other arena of life is it acceptable to work 8 hours a day and then come home and work another 2 to 3 hours? If you came to my house and I got off work at 5 o'clock, then walked upstairs for dinner, and then walked back downstairs for 3 more hours of work every night while my wife put the kids to bed and did all the work necessary to help them on my way, you tell me that something is wrong. I think the same is true of homework, which is why the study skills I'm about to explain, I think, need to be done in the classroom, at least as much as possible. Like, I know I sound like the crazy uncle at the family reunion, and I know I'll never win the battle against homework because it's just, what we do and, cultural entrenchment and whatever. That's fine, but I would at least suggest as much studying as possible occur in the classroom, and with the method I'm going to show you, I think that's possible. So, reading and summarizing. In my opinion, the main way for our students to go beyond recognition and into the realm of learning is to read their book or participate in an activity or hear a lecture, and then to summarize their learning in longhand in their own words. And there are 2 parts of that which are crucial to understand: longhand and in their own words. Now, according to a magnificent study called "The Pen is Mightier Than the Keyboard," writing longhand is the best way to retain and understand information. The main reason is because writing by hand is slower, and the way neurons fire in the brain to accomplish the act of writing by hand is more integrative than typing on a keyboard. But they also have to summarize what they learned in their own words. Now, this is the hard part. A student could read a paragraph all day and recognize the various elements of vocabulary within it, but as soon as they have to summarize that paragraph in their own words, it's like... But that is what we have to help them understand. If it feels hard, that means you're doing it right. If it feels difficult, that means your brain is doing the work to connect the neural pathways that will accommodate this new information. Like, that is what real studying feels like. Okay, Heimler, get practical. How do I do this? I'll give you one example for a class activity and then one from textbook reading. So suppose you run the urban game in your AP World or AP Euro classroom. If you don't know what that is, it's basically a map-making simulation that takes students through about 100 years of the Industrial Revolution. Okay, activity over. Now, once we have gone through all of that, I would give my students one 4x6 note card, and that's just just my preference. They can write it in a notebook or whatever. But I give them a 4x6 note card and I tell them to give it a title, The Industrial Revolution in England. Then I ask them to summarize the entire activity on the front of that card. I tell them to make it both concise and complete. So a potential summary of that activity might look like this, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, so you can pause it and have a look if you want. Now, I'd give them about 5 minutes at the end of class to do this, and here's the thing: if they do it that day in class, then you're essentially giving them the opportunity for spaced repetition without them having to find the motivation to do it themselves. Anyway, these summaries become like an exit ticket, and I look at them. Are they concise? Are they complete? If not, well, go back and do some more, or make sure it's more in your own words, and then they get to leave. Okay, now the same principle applies with textbook reading. I want to help them understand exactly what it is they're looking for in the book. And in order to do that, I give them a guiding question, which is really just the learning objective from the course and exam description. So on top of the card, I'd have them write the development of American foreign policy over time. And then under that is subcategory, the Indian Removal Act. And then as they read, they need to summarize how the Indian Removal Act demonstrates the development of American foreign policy. So the summary might go like this, and again, you can pause to read it if you're into that kind of thing. And again, I would argue at the very least that you need to show them how to do this with book paragraphs in the classroom so that they know how to do it at home. But I think the more you can do it in the classroom, maybe 10 minutes at the most, the more you're helping them with spaced repetition and formulating real and measurable learning. And when it comes time to actually study for the exam, they'll find that reading the words that they themselves wrote will lead to far greater recall than simply reading the textbook or watching videos over and over again. And that is a win for all of us. Now, if you want to introduce these concepts to your students, I made a student-focused video on the same topic on my main channel, and you can find that right here. Also, have a look at my teacher resources, which are linked in the description if you want help keeping your students engaged in the classroom. And I'll catch you on the flip-flop. Heimler out.